My book, The Spirit of Work, Timeless Wisdom, Current Realities, is now published. By interweaving science, business, and sacred texts from the world's great spiritual traditions, The Spirit of Work offers a high-level but approachable way to view and structure work from individual, community, and institutional perspectives. As part of the book's reach and outreach, I will be adding some solo podcasts and interviews with authors who write to build healthy workplaces, to give you a taste of how the book's concepts can enhance your workplace experience. To get to the Spirit of Work links and purchase from online stores directly, click on the online store of your choice from my website, which is shiftworkplace.com/the Spirit of Work. Make sure you put hyphens in between the words the Spirit of Work to ensure the correct URL comes up. So that's shiftworkplace.com/the Spirit of Work with hyphens. And that's how you'll get to your goal. Looking forward to your feedback. Hello, Culture and Leadership Connections podcast listeners. Today, I am very excited to present to you Nitin Govila, who is a global business executive with an extensive background in building and growing regions and organizations across multiple industries, channels, and cultures, with a specialization in manufacturing. Presently, as the Senior Vice President for the Serge Ferrari Company, Nitin manages 7 independently operated territories across Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and Africa. Serving on the executive leadership team, Nitin is directly accountable for all business operations and merger and acquisition activities across the region. He is also a practitioner and teacher of heart-based meditation and has been working to ensure that workplaces, especially in manufacturing environments, are more suitable for people to work in for well-being. So noise levels and everything that surrounds the environment for workers, and also to have the presence of mind and heart to be able to work through stressful and difficult times. So I'm very, very interested in hearing what Nitin has to say about his life and the groups that have influenced him. So welcome, Nitin.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me over.
So I'm just wondering if you can give our listeners a little bit more of an idea of who you are personally, because that's the formal bio, but tell us a bit more about you.
Yeah, so I was and I'm still an Indian. My first part of my life, I would say, were in India. I grew up there. I had my schooling there. I did also my professional education there, and then worked for a couple of companies for nearly 7 years. And those were the late 1990s and early 2000s. After that, I felt a need to upgrade myself to kind of adapt to the changes which are happening in the global world. And that made me take a step which was not so common at those times. I left my job and went for a full-time MBA in France just to put myself in a different situation and explore if I could build an international career. So that was a kind of a breakthrough action I would say I took. And ever since that, which was in 2003, I've been now outside of India. And strangely enough, I would say I've been continuously working with French companies. So that association still continues. And as you mentioned, I work for Serge Ferrari, which is a French company. It's in building materials, flexible composite material or technical textiles, as we may say, providing products for applications, both interior and exterior, whether you look at stadiums, airports, or you look at interior blinds, exterior blinds, acoustic products. So we have plenty of products for different market segments. And I manage the business operations in a big geographical territory, I would say, starting from Africa, going towards North Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and also the Oceania. So it's been an interesting journey so far, and I continuously enjoy that. Gives me a chance to travel and meet different people, different cultures, very different professionals, and also learn a lot and contribute what I can or whatever I can.
So you must be fluent in French then?
Yes, I am. Interestingly, when I went, the course was in English, so there was no obligation per se, but I started picking up and learning because we still had to take French classes. And then when I moved to a town which was quite far off from Paris, where I started working for a French company, then by living in the society, I picked it up much faster.
Of course, the immersion experience is necessary for picking up the language. On pourrait parler en français, mais l'entrevue est en anglais, malheureusement.
Oui, mais c'est pas grave, on peut faire ça la prochaine fois.
Oui. So for those of you who don't understand French, I was just saying to Netin that we could do the interview in French. And he said, no problem. Next time we'll do one in French. So yeah, that's great. I always love to hear people's stories. So when you were born, which part of India were you born into?
I was born in the western part of India, a town called Pune, which is an hour and a half from Mumbai. So that's where I spent my initial 8 years. My father was working there. So when he changed jobs and moved to northern part or Delhi, after that, continuously, I've been in the northern part of India. And after finish my schooling, I went further north to do my engineering. And then when I started working after that, I did a management course. And thereafter, when I started working, then I moved from western part of India to central part of India in that sense. And later I had a more national and a role where it meant I had to also travel to other parts of India, mainly south of India, because I was dealing with a product category which was pan-national.
Well, I can certainly see a theme of you moving around within wherever you are. So you moved around throughout India and really experienced, it's a vast country and very diverse. So you got a chance to have all those different experiences, and that really positioned you then for international work, would you say?
Now I can say that, yeah, actually, because in fact, strangely enough, till the time I left India to do my MBA, I had never even traveled outside of India, even for a holiday. So at that point of time, or couple of years, or maybe initial years, if you would have asked me this question, I may not have been able to answer that with the firm yes, but now I can say that because having been in India, and as you just briefly said here, that you're exposed to different languages, different cultures, different people, and the way food comes naturally different, as you will know. But more than that, it's the culture, the family values and everything. And that's what kind of ingrains you when you're younger. You don't consciously think about it, but you're continuously observing and learning, and that kind of prepares you for the differences in people, but you also learn to appreciate and accept that. So I think I carried that subconsciously, whether it was school, whether it was in say western part of India or the northern part of India. We always had people from the students, friends from different backgrounds in our neighborhood, different cultures, and as I said, languages. So I think when I went to France, and obviously it was an international MBA, again, our class had students from various parts of the world. Then when I started my career with a French company, which was also an international role to travel to different subsidiaries, work with different cultures. I think that subconscious thing then came out consciously in the way I interacted, spoke, worked, appreciated the differences, was aware and alert to certain nuances. And sometimes, obviously, you had to learn it the hard way, but you did it. And more importantly, I think I carried the curiosity, which I've always had to keep on asking questions. And that helped a lot. So yes, it's a long answer, but yes, in brief, I think subconsciously I was prepared, which really helped me later. And it continues to help me now.
Yeah, hindsight, you can always look back on something and then say, oh, that's how it contributed to where I am right now. But you don't notice in the moment, really. You're just living through it and experiencing it. But I would say that those people that are both curious, as you mentioned, and also who reflect on things are the ones that really gain the most intercultural competence.
Yes, exactly. Curiosity, observation. I would also possibly add an element of listening. Sometimes listening more, both what is said verbally and the other part is what is not said. While I'm not an expert in many languages, but I always kind of go deeper in some words, try to understand the origin of words for that matter, or, what's the reason of saying this thing in this way or this word, so these are the things. And the language, I feel, always says a lot about the culture of a country or of people. And the more deeper one tries to understand the logic of the language, the more better you're also able to understand the people, I would say.
Oh, I agree. It kind of reminds me of an experience that I had when I went to Japan for a while. I studied at United Nations University. And when I was there, a lot of these students who were from around the world asked me if I would correct or edit their papers in English because English wasn't their first language. And it was really interesting for me to see the way people think. The mistakes they would make in English showed me how they were thinking in their language. It was really fascinating. And that's the first time I really made that clear connection about what you just spoke about now, where language gives you clues to the culture. It's not the whole culture, but it gives you clues because it's how people think.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of people may say they are bilingual, trilingual, or 4 languages, 5 languages. But I think the way to really judge is that do they start thinking in that language or processing in that language? If they still process in their first language and then, okay, because of the comfort with the language, they may do much faster the conversion compared to any other person. There you might still see a flavor that it's still in their head, in their kind of home or their first language. But people who are able to do, kind of compartmentalize and, when they are with a certain group of people in a certain language, they process everything in that. I would say those are the true trilingual, bilingual, or whatever.
Yeah, that's fluency for sure.
Yes.
So let me go back to your childhood. Can you think of a couple of incidents that stand out because they helped you to be the type of person that you are now, might have contributed to your sense of being a leader or your sense of yourself culturally?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a long way, but when we talked about that, where I was born, so I was in a city where I don't know how much geographically people may know, but Pune is a city very close to Bombay. I would say 40 minutes by flight or even lesser. And now with the highway, I mean, it's 1.5, 2 hours. It's been always a very young city and has been kind of a hub for institution, colleges, universities. A lot of younger generation people are there and they still continue to be there, So the fact that I started my initial years, even though they were the first 10 years, but I think I was in a group of close friends, not family, but close friends, meaning that, okay, our family was there, but then it was maybe colleagues of my father or our neighbors or people we knew through some way or the other, but they were all friends, but not family members, which was most of my family members or close family members from my mother or father's side or cousins. They were all in the northern part of India. So what that brought in was, as I mentioned, the element of different of culture, languages, and there was then the element of, sharing, helping each other, and that young spirit. Even my parents were younger, right, when I was young, so they were also young. So it was a different spirit. So that, I suppose, has always been helping me, when I take leadership roles or working in these roles for the last 14, 15 years, keeping that spirit of energy and youth in the spirit of thinking and working, not in the terms of, okay, we have diverse age group in my team, but it was more in the spirit of working, enjoying work, helping each other, that team spirit between teams. We do a lot of sharing. We talk to a lot, have joint calls or joint meetings when it will start now, to interact a lot. So that's something I would say I've carried forward.
Can you think of a specific incident, though, an actual incident of you interacting with one of those families that stands out for you as a memory?
A couple of us, we used to study together. I mean, I think there were two boys, me and my friend. And my family was from the north of India, even though I was born in West. And that family was from the south of India. And generally, it was quite a big difference in the way education was looked at and the way his parents looked at things and my parents looked at things.
What was that difference between north and south view of education?
Oh, I would say discipline. Strict discipline I'm talking about. In today's time, nobody would do that as parents, but I'm talking about 40 years back, right?
So which side was the discipline side, the north or the south?
The south. But at the same time, it was coming from the parents, but between us, we never felt that difference, right? We had a good sharing and we used to work on homeworks together. We used to do preparation for tests together also. And then, we used to help out each other. So I think that spirit have always remembered. And the fact that you're asking me so many years and I can recall immediately, it means that it really touched me and mattered to me. I still know his name, but I may have lost touch for the last, I would say, 25, 30 years. But that still stays with me, And I also credit his father because he was the one who was ensuring that teaching was happening, because my father that time was traveling a lot. And he was in that time where he was supposed to change jobs. So he was more moving between Delhi and Pune. So in that sense, my friend's father took that responsibility. What I liked also was that no differentiation in that sense when he was teaching, neither favoritism to his son, neither being soft on me. He was really like a real tutor or teacher who wanted to ensure the best for both.
Mm-hmm. So you, from a young age, you're exposed to differences of action and thinking, and yet also this desire for equity, for people to be treated fairly and not treated differently because they're from a different region. And then also that idea of you becoming friends and working together, that no matter what the differences were in the way your parents saw things, your friendship was solid.
Exactly. So that helps because in corporate world, it's beyond friendship, right? Generally. And you obviously face different people, People may also have different interests. It's not necessary. It's only with peers. Even people who report to you or you report to whoever, there's always could be different interest at the, either there's alignment or there's a little bit, divergence, which is normal. But then how to find a way that there is still a common goal for which we are all together, in whatever roles we are doing, in whatever teams we are part of, and that element of fairness, right? Because as if I take the analogy between that, what was the analogy? That both the children should do well and they should be treated equally and they should have same access so that they do well in the exams. And Asian culture and Indian culture is a lot of pressure on exams and studies. So the same thing here. I mean, each organization, whether they are in different teams or different functions, in the end, the alignment is the same, right? We want the best for the company. It grows profitably, it grows sustainably, and people are well taken care of. So finally, each one, even if they're doing their own jobs, they are doing towards a certain objective, which may be part of the bigger one. Obviously, a salesperson has a certain role which may be adding up to his country's achievements, and the country's achievement adds to the region adds to the over global one. So in the end, we are those building blocks towards the overall structure and the goal of the company. So,
Unifying
yes,
goals, like goals were unifying and people working towards the same goals.
absolutely.
Well, what about in your teenage years, something that stands out from that, or your early adult years as being an incident? I'm looking for a specific example of something that is a memory for you. It can be personal things. I give you a few examples. So, what stands out for me during my teen years was that my parents went through a very difficult time with their marriage. And that really affected my studies. And I had a specific incident where a teacher said, I see you as being much more capable. I don't know what's going on with you, but if you ever want to talk about it, let me know. And I never did talk to her about it. But the fact that she actually approached me and noticed me in a sea of all these other adolescents and said that to me really reinforced my confidence, right? And I also spent a year in Germany. My parents sent me to Germany for a year. That stands out in my mind as one cultural faux pas after another. And trying to negotiate that was really difficult, so those stand out. And then in high school, when I discovered that I could excel at all the arts, I had training in music, but there were other arts that I could excel in. And I didn't know that because I hadn't been exposed to them before. So it was those things for me were pretty significant, I think, formationally. I don't know if that gives you any ideas. It wouldn't be the same for sure, but what stands out for you?
Yes, when I was listening, I think two things popped in my mind. Throughout my life, while being exposed to these changes in different parts of India, was that still I was with my parents in that sense, till the time my university started. So that was the first time I was supposed to kind of leave home. Okay, sometimes I've gone and lived with relatives, but those would have been week, 10 days, 2 weeks maximum, or 3 weeks, right? But this is the time where I was leaving home, in a way becoming independent, going for my university, staying in a hostel. And hostel life in those times, used to hear about maybe ragging as a first year, or we don't know which kind of environment you'll be, what kind of hostels would be, rooms would be. So I think go into the unknown, little bit scared, little bit concerned, but okay, my father came to drop me, and then he went back. So there was those initial days of loss, but I think kind of came around it, and okay, then I would say in a month or two was totally enjoying that life and kind of grew and became more mature. So I think that element that okay, there is an element of fear and surprise and a bit of shock kind of helped me as I took this decision, when I decided to leave my job and go to France, out of all the places, in that sense that it's not coming from an Anglo-Saxon country. I was going to a continental Europe, going for an MBA, not knowing what may happen, not knowing whether I'll have a job after I finish my MBA or not, having spent so much money and everything. I think that helped me, so to be prepared, while also and there's an element of other things, because by that time I was also had already been into meditation for few years. So the element of hearing my heart's voice and to being strong and have that conviction that yes, my heart is telling me, it's guiding me, yes, I should go in that direction. That was also the second point in that sense, which supported me. But the fact that I had been through this experience, that being alone, and suddenly starting a kind of a new life, in a way helped me when I went to France, leaving India for the first time. So that's one thing I would say. Second thing, which is, I would say, a little bit more personal in that sense, that I was always into sports, quite active, into playing many things. And cricket is a sport which is followed by a lot of Indians and some of the Anglo-Saxon countries, being, Britain, Australia, New Zealand. So in that sense, I was really serious about that, and I wanted to kind of do something in that. Okay, it was not professional sports that time, or there was not so much money or glamour in that. It was just I liked it. But those times, as young children in countries like India, you had only few options, right? Either you went for engineering, medicine, or some other professional courses which you knew can get you a job after you finish. So it's not that I felt bad, but I knew the reality and I accepted that. So now, when my son, I mean, I have a daughter and a son. So he decided, I mean, he's quite passionate also of sports. Maybe there's some element of my genes in that. And then he said, he's taken up tennis. He really wants to take it up seriously. So as a parent now, I'm trying to do my best to support him in this journey. Now, what will happen, nobody knows. But at least having learned that, okay, in maybe 40 years, the time was not right. There were not so much opportunities and it was not a natural direction to take. But here, if I'm able to manage it, support it both psychologically, physically, mentally and financially, and he's ready to work hard and train and everything, then I firmly believe that it's my responsibility to support him in this journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So not being able to pursue your passion is something you're now passionate about helping your son do as he shows his talent for a different sport, which is also good. Sometimes parents insist that their children be interested in the same sports they're interested in too. So it comes a continuous cycle of imposing yourself on your children. Yeah, those are great stories. Thank you for sharing those. Now, I have lots of questions because everything you say gives me a whole bunch of new ideas, but I wanted to ask you about that piece that you mentioned earlier where you said meditation became a part of what you were doing. Now, did that happen when you were a child, or did that happen when you were a young adult, when you went to university? Did it happen when you went to France or before that? When did that happen in your life?
I would say young adult. I had just finished my management and I had started my professional career. I started working for a company. And interestingly, this practice of meditation, or the meditation itself as a word concept, was introduced by one of my sales guys. And in those times, I was in the western part of India. It was a big territory. We used to go for tours to meet customers, to do visits together, as you would do, a manager would do with their sales guys. And then during those long drives, we used to talk, we used to share a few things. And his parents were meditation trainers. So he was kind of been exposed to it for quite early in his life. And he was a practitioner. So he kind of started sharing that. And then, so obviously it took me time. I asked him a lot of questions. He shared few books with me. I read that. And then finally I started. So now whenever I meet him and we keep in touch off and on, or when we meet in big gatherings or meditation, I always say, you are the best salesperson. The fact that you were able to kind of mold me and get me into a practice of meditation, and that too, it took a lot of effort. Some people just start. In today's world, it's much easy to kind of share about that, and people will be willing to do that. That time it was not. Plus India, I mean, you have a strong religious influence anyway in your families, respective families and everything. So I always joke with him in that sense. So that, I think that was in early 20s, and quickly enough, I really felt nice doing that system because there was no kind of obligation. There was no contract. It's a practice which is offered free to anybody who's interested. So neither the trainers get paid anything. They are volunteers. So nobody has a motivation to kind of sell something or bring you into a certain group, right? It was just natural. It was their feeling of openness of heart that something is good, why not share? So that kind of helped me to grow. I also kind of, and trainers are not like, it's not like a corporate ladder that after a few years you become a trainer or you grow. Everybody, whether a practitioner or a trainer, they are same in that sense, except that a trainer kind of then volunteers to say that, yes, I am happy to share about the practice, and the trainer may know better about the practice or can explain better and is willing to give his or her personal time to share the practice with others or help people start meditation. So that motivation came to me very strongly and very quickly. So within a year or two, actually, I was also made a trainer. And then, so when I used to travel in my work, even within different cities in India, or sometimes I used to go to some areas during weekends, take a bus or a train just to share about this practice and help people start meditation. And that has then continued with me throughout, and it does till now. Obviously, things have changed now. We do much more sessions also with corporates. We do much more than to one sessions. We do also one to many sessions. And it's a heart-based system, quiet meditation. So yeah, that's the origin of it, and that's the way it has evolved. And it has also helped me, I would say, in a different way in my professional journey, meaning in terms of helping me sometimes taking decisions, even coming to find some solutions, because the key element is that when the mind is at rest and peace, then you're very clear, you're very transparent. So certain ideas come automatically, certain directions come automatically. And if you're able to kind of develop that capacity, which meditation helps to listen to your voice of the heart, then it's pure. It's not colored with good or bad, right or wrong, or black or white in the material sense. It's just something which comes. If you have the courage and conviction, if you follow on it, later I've realized it always turns out to be the right one. But at that moment, sometimes you don't have the elements to judge it. Now that's where your own conviction and courage comes, and how much are you feel strong about it, or how much are you able to, believe in that, or you feel that this was the real voice of the heart and this is the real guidance which you got from your inside self.
I have a lot of personal experience with that too. So I'm really relating to what you're saying right now. I'm wondering if you have an example of a time when you were in meditation and you were open and clear and transparent, and some kind of an idea or an answer came to you. Do you have an example of one that stands out?
I would say the immediate one, which I touched upon a bit, was the decision to go for my MBA to France, because it is not an easy decision. I was already married. I had just had a daughter who was very young, I think 7-8 months, and to leave my job, go for an MBA, take a bank loan. After that, you don't know what will happen, was not an easy one. And I did not know French also. So my experience has always been in sales, marketing and business development. So how do you go in an alien environment where these kinds of functions will require a local language knowledge, right? It's not about consulting or strategy, where possibly you can still manage at a corporate function with English language. So these were questions, even though I was convinced and things were moving for me step by step, doors were opening. So I felt it's the right direction. But at some point of time, I did feel that, I really have to be sure that this is the direction I want to take. So that's where I meditated on it. And I think it really came out convincing with clarity that, yes, I have to move ahead and I should go ahead. Now,
yeah, so you had this idea that came to you and that you received confirmation that that was the right decision, and you kept thinking about it and looking for more confirmations that this was the right direction. But then you still have to put effort into it and courage. It's not like it just happened automatically, right? And then you might run into an obstacle. Then you have to stop and clear your mind and your heart again and say, what's happening here and how do I interpret that? So yeah, it's great.
And it was to some extent that when I came to France, obviously it was not so easy to find an internship, or I took an option as part of my course to do a 6 months practical professional project with the company. It took a lot of time to find. And obviously, as you said, sometimes you look back and you were wondering, okay, why did I do? Was it the right one? Was it my mind coloring that also? But in the end, patience paid and it worked out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So let me go back a little bit to the groups that you were born into. So people are born into families, obviously, whether it's the same family or adopted family, or they move sometimes. And they're also born into a cultural context. They're born into a religious context, whether they're actively practicing that religion or not. And they're born into national and regional contexts. So ethnicity, lots of things, you just born into that context. Which would you say has influenced you?
Definitely, being born as an Indian in any society or any part of India you live, you're always surrounded by people, right? Always exposed to different people, always living on the same road where you'll have different kinds of people, different social class, language, and this. So I think this has been always there. And I think that is something that would be always with me. I've been also born in an environment where my parents were kind of independent, even though they had their large families on my mother's side and father's side. But because he took initiative to make efforts to do a much higher education, which not many brothers, sisters, or anybody did in his family, so he created his own professional journey. So I think that also had a great influence on me, making my decisions and making my own career and direction. So that also, I think, played a very key part.
Mm-hmm. Were you born into Hinduism?
Yes.
Were you born into a particular caste, or, those things all influence the way we see life as well?
Yes. So I would say caste part was not so much strong. Obviously, when you are among a group where you're more close, I mean, like when we moved to north of India, you were much closer with a extended family. So then you have certain effects of culture and habits and social, norms, because there's that element of close family and everything. And I get to appreciate much more the openness, which I felt in my initial years when I was in the western part of India, so sometimes when you don't see the other side, you're not able to understand what you had or what you did not value much, for that example, right? But yes, we are a Hindu family. My parents were following certain religious practices, and I respect that, and they are well committed to that, and they still do it. What I learn out of that, it's not about judging what anybody does or which kind of faith or God they follow. What is important to see, how do they do that? Do they do that with belief, seriousness, faith, and effort, or it's just something which is just spoken, but you don't see in that sense in action? And that's where I think I really respect and appreciate and learn a lot with their diligence, their efforts they make, and in whatever they follow and believe in. And they are very strong in that sense. And it's a great learning in that sense to observe also.
Mm-hmm. What would you say you learned from that?
Well, I think once you know, okay, this is what you believe in, and it may come through your experience, maybe through something which might happen in your life, then you really stick to that and make full efforts to be sincere to that. So I think that's something I take a lot from that.
Mm-hmm. And that probably affects your wholehearted approach to the meditation practice that you follow,
Exactly.
Right? Do it, live it, don't just talk about it, actually make it happen in your life.
Exactly. And as I said, I was not born in that meditation family. So when I was exposed, I took time to, obviously to start the practice. But when I started and I started seeing the effect the meditation brings, I became much stronger in believing that, and more regular. And by default, then you feel you also want to contribute or be a volunteer and do certain things. So it naturally flows in that, So it's more important to really feel what you want to do. You may call it as your own compass in that sense, which guides you and says, okay, yeah, this is what you wanted, or this is what you feel you want to believe in. And then you go wholeheartedly. Even when I share during introduction sessions to share with people who've come for a talk or to understand, I always say that, okay, I'm sure and everybody is doing certain things in today's time. They may be exposed to different practices of meditation also, or any other thing. But if you're getting into this, just try it sincerely. Whether it could be a week, a month, or whatever, and see the results for yourself. And then you can judge. Either way, you're not paying anything, nobody's charging anything, there's no contract. But at least, even if you have to judge something, whether it's efficacious or not, or it's good or not, or whether you are able to feel something or not, you need to give it some time and do it as advised. It's not like if you're told 30 minutes, you do for 5 minutes, and then you say, I don't feel anything. What is this system of meditation, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the key element. After that, yes, each one chooses their own journey.
Yeah. Do it as advised. I think that's a great motto for life. Learn something as advised. So my son is a composer and a percussionist, and he went to study drumming in a couple of different places in Latin America. And he said the most important thing is to learn it the way that people learned it, the way that people teach it, and the way that people feel it. Then afterwards, you can build. But if you're trying to improvise before you even know where the foundation is, you haven't understood it properly. You're not going to be able to create in the same way. And that sounds to me like that's what you're proposing. So then from that groups that you were born into, there were groups that you traveled to. I mean, because you traveled to many places. So you would have experienced other cultures from an ethnic and linguistic and national standpoint. And then also you move from a Hindu culture to a Christian to a secularist, very secularist culture in France. And you adopted the meditation practice. And you would have had a group around that. Well, also engineering, manufacturing, of sales. From the groups that you joined, what stands out for you right now is influencing your sense of leadership and culture?
I mean, while there's already a lot of difference within a country, but between countries, I mean, obviously it's much, much bigger difference going from India to France in the way people look at things in France, the way people work. And when you understand that, and this is where, for me, my curious nature helped, because through way of questioning and talking to people, and obviously every country I go, there is always generally a meditation group, which helps me to understand things much faster outside of the corporate world, because I am a firm believer that while you do learn a little bit about culture in a corporate setting, but sometimes it's a bit conditioned. What you really learn about the culture and the things behind which affect the people in the way they behave in a corporate environment, that's more important to understand. That is what you learn by talking to people outside of the corporate world. You could have somebody, you see people sometimes walking, talking, you may talk to your neighbors, you may obviously, if you have some people in your friend circle or extended circle, and here, I mean, having people who were in meditation already in that country in the same practice helped me to meet them and understand. So that helped me to learn a lot about the culture, the way people think, because the way of education also in France is very different. The way children grow, they are taught to question things, they're taught to debate and argue in a positive way, and try to understand, go deeper, and that obviously comes by default when they are working. So sometimes in a culture, maybe in an Asian culture, for example, somewhere you may think it's argumentative, it's conflictive. But it's not the case when you look at it from the franchise. It's more to make things interesting, to understand. We are trying to, and in fact, I've heard sometimes examples where the presentation or discussions, if they were much more animatic or much more people involved and arguing in this, meant it was a good presentation, because it gave food for thought to people to also open up and discuss, share their perspectives and everything. Sometimes if I think audience is a bit silent, you may assume that maybe it didn't touch the nerve. So now these are very subtle elements where you may misunderstand and misrepresent how did you do in a presentation or how did this discussion go, whereas it may actually mean the exact opposite of it. So I think these are one of the elements, but these are few things which come across when you are in that environment, in whether in corporate or you meet people outside, and then when you're able to connect and join the dots, you get a deeper understanding.
When I was teaching at university, I taught in two different faculties, and one was taught in French. And most of the people that were there were either from France, from Quebec, or from French colonized countries. And then the other side was all Anglophone or Asian. And so the teaching experience was extremely different. So when I was in the Anglophone situation, people were very quiet. It was really hard to get them to participate. They didn't want to do things together in groups. And they would say things like, don't force me to participate, or I don't have to give a comment. And I found it very difficult to teach when you couldn't get a response from people. And it seemed to be everyone in their own little individualistic bubble. And in the French environment, it was another kind of shock, because people were consistently attacking.
Yeah.
So it was like, you said that, but I think you've made a mistake. If you look back in this, there'll be this, this, and this, right? And a couple of times they were right. And I'd say, you're right. I made a mistake. And they go, aha, I knew it. And they really enjoyed that. And it was not something I was used to. So I found it was really interesting to go back and forth between these two environments that both felt really foreign to me. And I imagine that you experienced something similar when you started working in France, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, obviously, luckily, I didn't come to a work environment directly. So I had, I would say, 6 or 7 months in college. It started getting a little bit understanding. But when you're thrown in a professional environment, obviously, there's no comparison to that. You learn it there only. So as you said, yes, exactly, to evaluate a discussion in that sense. In fact, what also helped me, in a way, I was always open to different points of view. But when I came, I actually worked with an international cross-cultural consulting company, which always used to have somebody as a country expert when the trainer used to conduct sessions. So interestingly enough, there was an opportunity came and I just kind of applied and they selected me as the country expert. So There were a couple of French companies who were just started their offices in India, big companies. And this trainer, who was actually German, French, and a multicultural background. So I attended those one-day sessions with her. And I learned a lot. And actually, it really helped me then when I went to the corporate world, because I was kind of prepared in those nuances and differences. But when you are thrown into that, you still get some of those curveballs or something else comes which you may not have prepared for, and you just learn it on the way. One key difference, I would say, one of the things, whether sometimes it's forced by certain things in France, French working environment, or whether it's people sometimes really mean it, depends obviously from person to person, is about firing people or asking them to leave. Sometimes it's not kind of natural, comes in French organizations. It's part of the social system. It's part of many other things also. And they will always work to find some skill set. Okay, if a person came for a certain job or is for a person certain role, maybe not performing, but then they will still try to find something where that individual could be used for, and that person may have a certain skill set. Now, contrary to possibly in an Anglo-Saxon environment, we may just say, oh, okay, maybe there are many people available and maybe it's easy to kind of fire. Okay, the person did not fit into that role or did not kind of demonstrate the skill set which we were looking for, or the results. So okay, let's remove that person and hire a new one. So it kind of opens you a different way of thinking, and in the end you may end up having a good resource. Possibly maybe that role or that function was not the right one, but you kind of having still not losing the right people, who may still have the right head over their shoulders and the right thinking which the company may need.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like in the French environment, they're more likely to try and find another spot for that person rather than just dismissing the person.
Exactly. And part of it may be because of the social system and maybe costs associated with it. But part of it, I've also seen bosses and people, and I've worked with some top guys, even my early years in France, very closely. There are sincere efforts also, and the way of looking at things were different. So that's a real learning I've carried forward even when I moved to Singapore, and I've been there now nearly 15 years here in this part of the world, even when I work with my teams, so for sure, we could always take the easy way, but we try to always, see if something can be done. Maybe a person can be trained. I've always sometimes, ensured till the last step to even arrange coaches for my country heads, some who were maybe not performing or maybe they were lacking in certain things, to at least feel good and clear in my heart that I did my best to ensure that people could do. But after that, if it did not happen, it did not happen.
Mm-hmm. I think in North America, there's two extremes. One is either people are just marched out with no explanation, which doesn't really help anybody, or they're held on to with no explanation forever. So I think I'm liking the French system better from what you said to me so far.
I would again say, actually, one learning I can say now is that there's nothing you can say is a perfect one or the worst one.
Right.
If you're moving in that range, either you're tilting more towards a certain one or tilting left towards a certain one, but there's nothing real perfect one, real best one, or this works in this environment better, or this kind of situation better, or whatever. I think that the fact that then the leadership, who may be exposed to different kinds of environments or situations, they will then find the right way to manage it. But over the years, I've learned, because even with French companies, I've worked with their American subsidiaries or Asian subsidiaries. And in the end, you can never say this is right or this is bad or whatever.
Yeah, everything's contextual and grows out of a culture. So for sure, which brings me to my next question. Is there a time, and there have been probably many in your life, when you felt that you had kind of a culture shock moment where something you thought was the way everybody did something is turned out to be your own experience and your own cultural experience?
I think this part, the employee part, the retention part, and finding a way to keep them or work out a way, through way of discussions, giving them an opportunity to share possibly what they can do, is really something was very unique. Because for me, it was like, okay, with my first 7 years in India, I mean, even in big Indian companies, was always, okay, somebody does not perform to the KPIs for that year. Maybe you give a little bit more chance, but thereafter, okay, it's an easy decision. You ask the person to leave. So for me, that is to even find some good things, even in a person whom you may know may have been given quite a lot of opportunities, but you still try your best, and that you also understand that nobody is perfect for any job. The element of coaching, I would say that's really something I was exposed to coming out of India. I mean, now coaching has really caught on everywhere, I would say. But that time when I was in Europe, that's the first time I heard about these words per se in the context of, professional environment, coaching, mentoring. So these were really new, but I have kept them with me, and I obviously try to do that for myself as a professional, and also for my team members if and when they would need it.
Good examples. Now, what about temperament? So it's something you're born with. People will say, oh, that's the way Netta was when he was 2 years old and he's still that way. And other things that you grow into. So that would be more what you acquire as personality. What would you say you're born with temperament wise, and what you might have grown into or changed from your experiences in life?
It's a difficult one, but I can try to answer. I would say if I look back, one thing which has never left me is the attitude of never give up. I've been through ups and downs, some difficult situations in that sense, and roadblocks also, and setbacks, but I've stood my ground.
So maybe you were born with persistent nature, would you say?
Yes, if you define it that way. Yeah.
Never giving up is what you developed on top of it to make it work for you.
Yes. And second thing, and again, I think maybe you can frame it better, but I think when I look back, whether school, whether college days, when we were working on group projects, whether in work environment, I've always been the one who's been able to look at a situation differently and even come up with solutions, even in a impossible situation or whatever, where people ever thought, let it, or always get people to think differently and come up with a certain solution or a different way of approaching things, rather than looking what they see and then they come to a conclusion, oh, we cannot do anything about that.
You're an outlier. You can stand at the edge and look in and look out.
Yeah, I would say I have that trait. More and more I see in a professional environment, and I've also been working with a leadership coach. So, and this does come out that I'm able to be operational and strategic, but at the same time, as you said, I'm able to be inside and in things and out of it and have an immediate helicopter view. And sometimes I also feel that maybe I move too fast, which people are not able to follow. And then you need to learn to how to slow down your speed and accept that, if they're not able to cope up with their speed, does not mean that they are bad. It's just the way everybody processes information. Again, we come back to the same thing, right? That different cultures have a different way of processing information.
Yeah, that's really a great point. So here's your chance to promote something, your soapbox moment. So what would you like to promote to the Culture and Leadership Connections audience right now?
I would actually say that much more in today's time, and I suppose going forward, not only the mind, but the heart will play a very key role in any professional. And for me, those professionals who will have this balance of heart and mind also find a way or develop the skill set or whatever I may say to listen to the voice of the heart, to also balance between the thinking and the feeling, because the heart will always give as a signal, not as a language or a word, but what you feel. Those professionals or people, let's forget professionals, I would say anything you do, I think that will become key. And I suppose that will also help people to take the right, if I use the word right in the material context, right decisions for companies, for their personal lives, for the world, for the society at large, or anyone. And I think it's becoming important. And I suppose more and more you hear about neuroscientists and other people who are in this kind of field. They are measuring these elements of effects of either meditation or the role of the heart beyond the classical role of beating and meaning that we are living or pumping of the blood or whatever, but much deeper role, even shaping as an individual, would be key. So to look at leaders of the future as a heartful leader or those kinds of things, I think I would say would be really key. And if anyone in this world can find a way, it does not have to be one kind of practice or system, anything which they can find where they're able to connect with their inner self or their heart and then use it in conjunction with their mind, I suppose it will go a long way for those individuals.
I 100% agree. And that is just what we need to do, is to become more integrated and whole, and in our response to the world, more integrated and whole. We can't do that with our minds alone. We have to have a heart and a spirit and a body involved. So I'm happy to hear you say that. So we're at the end of the interview now. Are there any closing words you'd like to finish off with?
No, I mean, I would just say thank you, Mary, for this opportunity. It's been a very different kind of, I would say, conversation than I've had with different people, because it's gone to certain elements where you know it's there, but you never take out time to dig deeper, go back 40 years or those many years back in your life and to pick up those moments which kind of might be in the shadows or you may never have paid attention. So it was a wonderful exercise for me also in that sense. And it was a good, I would say, conversation of self-discovery. I don't know whether whatever I said adds any value for anybody, but for me, it's been a great self-discovery element and conversation. And I really thank you, Mary, for that.
Oh, you are most welcome. And you know it is certainly valuable for anybody that's listening, because their hearts are responding to the things you're saying that are coming from your heart. And so it's all a good way for us to stay interconnected. Thank you very much for joining me today, Nitin.
Thanks a lot. And thank you. My pleasure too. And look forward to being connected in the future in whichever way.
Awesome. Nitin Govila started his life in a small Indian community with predictable interpersonal relations and a strong emphasis on education as the doorway to opportunity. His subsequent move to the UK and other countries created situations where he felt out of his element, lonely, and struggled to belong. These feelings did not limit him, however. Rather, they propelled him towards a lifelong study of intercultural relations, business negotiations, and to a series of books and publications, specifically in the area of the manufacturing industry and intercultural relations. I enjoyed my interview with him and look forward to reading his soon-to-be-published memoir. If you enjoyed this podcast, go straight to your phone and in the browser type lovethepodcast.com/culture and leadership using the and sign. Immediately, what will pop up will be all the places you can rate and review the podcast. That will help us get to our goal of 1,000 downloads per episode, and also will make you feel good about helping move this wonderful project of the oneness of humanity in unity and diversity forward. Thank you for listening, and may culture and leadership connections continue to guide and inspire your day. Hey, podcast listeners. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 downloads per episode by going to followthepodcast.com/culture and leadership. That's followthepodcast.com/culture and leadership. If you type that into your browser and you use the and sign, not the word and, culture and leadership, it will automatically adjust to your phone. And then you can follow and rate. So followthepodcast.com/culture and leadership. Thanks in advance for following and for reviewing.